Hi, welcome to my 6th grade classroom. My name is Mr. Balderrama and I'm a social studies teacher at Corona Foothills Middle School. Today what I'd like to do is I would like to introduce you to my classroom procedures. I'd also like to navigate and show you my classroom blog. And so each day in my classroom, what I do is I post my objectives on the board. So I have my performance objectives, my learning objectives, and my essential questions. So this week students will be describing scientific and cultural advancements in ancient Egypt. For the daily objective, they can describe the importance of the Nile River and how it impacted Egypt. And their essential questions for the week will be, how did the Nile River impact the development of ancient Egypt, and what were the scientific and cultural advancements of ancient Egypt? After I go ahead and announce the objectives to my students, what I have them do is I have them work on their bell work for about 5 minutes. And during that time, what they're trying to do is they're trying to not only identify and answer the questions, but they work in collaborative groups and they have an opportunity to talk with others and make sure that they have a good understanding of the questions. One of the things that I tell my students each day is you may walk into the classroom and you might not know the answers, but after practice you will definitely know the answers when you leave my classroom. So I like to set up my bell work questions in 2 ways. One is I like to touch down on background information, and then I like to look at the depth of knowledge. So my questions for this lesson is, what similarities do you notice between ancient Mesopotamia and ancient Egypt? And then my second question is, how can you explain how the Nile River affected and provided light to ancient Egypt? Students, again, will work for 5 minutes. Another thing that they're doing in that amount of time is they are going to be writing in their agendas. And so I also post my homework assignments on the board here. And so today's homework assignment, it ties not only directly to the performance objective, but it also is practice that they've done in the bell work. So for today's homework, students will use evidence from the textbook to write a paragraph describing how the Nile River impacted ancient Egypt. And there's a progression there. So again, I'm touching on background knowledge. I'm looking at that depth of knowledge and really having them explain what they know, and then I'll go back and reinforce and practice with our homework assignment. So as students are working on bell work, they have their agendas out, they've written in their agendas, and I'm coming around to stamp them for readiness. So I'm looking for 2 things. I'm looking for completion of homework, and I'm looking to see that they're ready and on task each day. I go around the classroom and answer. So this is what my classroom looks like. They work in collaborative groups. I go back to the front of the board, I reread the questions, make sure that everyone has a firm understanding of what I'm asking, and then I have students collaborate within their groups. So I have A partner, which is directly across from you, a B partner, who's the student is next to you, and your C partner, the student is diagonal from you. I also do an activity that I call bottoms up, heads together, where I give students an opportunity to come together, discuss, and then they select one representative to come back to the whole group and share their answers. So this is my way of checking for understanding each day, but it really gives me a good gauge of who knows what we're talking about for the day, and it also allows me to answer any questions that I need to so that they can be successful with the homework assignment. So the next thing that I'd like to go over is I'd like to take the time to navigate you through my classroom blog. Here at Corona Foothills Middle School, each teacher has a classroom blog in which we provide resources and additional links to help our students. Some students may need to use these additional links when they're absent. Others like to go back and refresh themselves with what was going on in the lesson each day. Students will write down their homework assignments in their agenda, but we also have the homework assignments on our classroom blog. So right here, you're looking at a classroom blog that I created for my 6th grade social studies class, and I'm going to tap on the tab. So here's how my blog is structured. Each day, I have my performance objective, my learning objective, my essential questions, and my homework listed for parents and students. In addition to my homework assignment, I also provide keynotes and additional links, just in case a student was absent or maybe a student needs some additional resources for support. So here, I have a keynote for Egypt papyrus. And so what I do is I have created a link where parents and students can click on that tab, and now they have access to the daily keynote that we used in class. Now this is nice because students can print this off and study at their own leisure, or if they were absent or know that they are going to be absent, they can have notes printed off in advance. In addition to keynotes, I also like to provide additional links so that, again, if a student needs some extra support with practice, or if they're looking for additional reading materials, they now have opportunities to read outside of the classroom. So here, I provided a link where students can go back and get background information, or they can read about some of the information in addition to the text to help them with any of their assignments. On this particular link, not only do we have additional reading, but then students can navigate further and look to find any type of resources for assignments that they're doing in terms of research papers, keynote presentations, timelines, story activities.
This is really my way to keep students engaged outside of the classroom.
And next I'd like to talk about assessments. Each week we check for understanding by making sure that students are completing a formative assessment. What we like to see is that students are mastering the objective for the week. And so we have various forms of assessments that we give, but one of the things that we like to stay consistent with is students making sure that they're practicing their test-taking strategies. So number one, we make sure that students read the question carefully. Number two, they should be asking themselves, what is this question asking me to do? Number three, we want students to use highlighters, or we want them to highlight the important ideas. Number four, we want to make sure that students are not forgetting to go back to the text and find evidence that supports the answers. And number five, we really want to make sure that students are expressing themselves through writing and justifying their answers. And the last piece is really to go back and show their work. Not only are they highlighting and writing, but we want to give them opportunities to show us that evidence and really explain what they know. So in addition to making sure that students are aware of their performance objectives, practicing bell work daily, and completing weekly formative assessments, we want to make sure that our students are setting goals for themselves. So one of the ways that we're able to do this is we provide students with progress reports. Each Monday in their advisory-based classroom, students are given a progress report so that they can set goals and also make sure that they're aware of their achievement. One of the ways that we like to do this at Corona is we like to make sure that everyone is looking at their grades and tracking their grades on a weekly basis. Now, parents also have access to these grades. Through the use of PowerSchool, parents can go ahead and go on the internet and they can also see the grades that are being posted in each teacher's gradebook. Now, if you need support with this, what you can do is you can notify the front office and we can help get you established with a username and password. Hi, and welcome to my classroom. I'd like to take you on a virtual 360 tour of my classroom. Some of you have been here in the past, but others haven't. And I just want to make sure that you are seeing from the perspective of what my students would be using in their classroom. So here we have the collaborative groups that we work in. Students are able to work with partners so that they're really looking and focusing at three skills. They're listening to each other, they're speaking with each other, and then there's opportunities to write within these groups. So ultimately that leads to thinking, and that's where the magic happens in my classroom. I also have instructional posters that students are able to gather information from. We focus on the 6 traits of writing in my class, so students are able to use this here. Another thing that we like to do is we like to really kick up the rigor in my classroom. So what I've done is I've included the poster that I use when I create my lesson plans, so that students can see where these words are coming from, and so they can see the different levels and depth of knowledge that we are attacking in the classroom. I really like for my 6th graders to become independent learners, and part of that is giving them responsibility. So my expectations in this classroom is that students are bringing their own materials to class each day. They're going to need highlighters, expo markers, paper, pencils, but in the case that they don't have those materials, I do have some available for them to use. And again, my students become comfortable with getting up and using my materials, but at the same time, they're respectful of the classroom, because this is one of the first times that they're transitioning from class to class. And so when I have 120 students, it's really important that they all understand that this is our classroom and they need to respect the materials in the classroom. A lot of my teaching takes place here in the front of the classroom, and so I like to use technology. Students are able to see me from their cooperative groups. I also like to give them opportunities to move around the classroom, share ideas, discuss with one another, and really, most importantly, go ahead and listen and explain and really engage themselves in what we're learning about in my class. I've gone ahead and I've showed you where I post my learning objectives. This is my workstation, and really it's this technology piece where I'm able to fire off videos, control the projectors, but most importantly, I want to make sure that students have a chance to see me. So I've created wide channels in my classroom so that I can move around freely, and so that students are not only able to share and discuss their ideas with me, but I think that that close proximity to them really gives them an opportunity for me to check for understanding, but also for them to explain and help make sure that they are feeling comfortable with the material that we've learned in the class. Back here in the classroom, I have some of the resources that we have in place. We have RightSource books for writing. I have some additional reading materials based on the social studies content. I have additional reading books that they can look at when they are in a position to read other materials. I like to make sure that my students are going onto the computer and doing research, so students have an opportunity to access my blog or maybe log on and do some research based on what we're learning in class. And in the back of the classroom, I also have resources in place such as my dictionaries, my thesauri. I have writing journals in place, periodicals and newspapers, and this is where I collect all of my materials. So all of my materials are placed in baskets, periods 1, 2, 3, enrich and reteach, 8th period, and my advisory-based class. And so that is a tour of my classroom, and that is what your child sees when they step into my room each day. Thank you for visiting.